The crystal chandelier above him glittered like 1,000 silent judges, and for a moment, Nathan Carter wished he had never stepped through those towering iron gates. The mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut shimmered against the night sky, its marble steps glowing beneath soft golden lights, its manicured gardens lined with imported roses that probably cost more than his monthly rent. He adjusted the cuffs of his only suit, a charcoal gray jacket he had worn to court hearings, funerals, and now this charity gala, and felt painfully aware that he did not belong. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that remind us that hearts can change in a single night, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Nathan had not planned on attending the event. He was a 34-year-old mechanic from a modest neighborhood in Stamford, raising his 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, alone after his wife passed away from a sudden illness 3 years earlier. His days were filled with grease-stained hands, overdue bills, school lunches packed before sunrise, and bedtime stories whispered in the quiet darkness of a small apartment. The invitation to the annual Harper Foundation Charity Gala had arrived by accident, or so he thought. It turned out that one of his longtime customers, a retired judge named Walter Simmons, had purchased a table and listed Nathan as his guest without telling him. Walter had always said that good fathers deserve to be seen. So here he was, standing among hedge fund managers, surgeons, tech entrepreneurs, and socialites draped in silk gowns and diamond necklaces. Conversations floated through the air like perfume, light, expensive, untouchable. He caught fragments about overseas investments, art auctions in Manhattan, and ski trips in Aspen. Every laugh felt rehearsed, every handshake felt calculated. Nathan tried to shrink into the background, clutching a glass of sparkling water he barely sipped. He thought about Chloe at home with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had promised to keep her overnight. He pictured Chloe's drawing taped to their refrigerator, a crayon masterpiece of the two of them holding hands under a crooked sun. At the top, she had written in careful letters, "My dad is my hero." The memory steadied him, but it also made him feel even more out of place. Heroes didn't look like this. Heroes didn't stand alone in rooms like this. The hostess of the evening, Victoria Harper, finally appeared at the grand staircase. She was known across the Northeast as a billionaire philanthropist, the widowed heiress to a vast real estate empire, and the driving force behind countless children's hospitals and scholarship programs. Tonight, she wore a deep navy gown that shimmered like midnight water, her silver hair styled elegantly, her presence commanding yet strangely warm. When she began to speak about the foundation's mission to support underprivileged families and single parents, the room fell into reverent silence. Nathan listened carefully. Her words were not polished corporate slogans. They carried weight. She spoke of loss, of raising her son alone after her husband's tragic accident decades ago, of the loneliness of sitting at a kitchen table at midnight, wondering how to be both mother and father. Something in her voice trembled just slightly, and Nathan felt an unexpected connection. For the first time that evening, he looked up instead of down. Dinner was served in a vast ballroom adorned with white orchids and candlelight. Nathan found his seat at the edge of the table, surrounded by strangers who spoke about charitable giving as if it were a competitive sport. When the auction began, paddles shot up in quick succession. $10,000, $25,000, $50,000. The numbers made his stomach tighten. He had come with nothing but his presence. He could barely afford new tires for his truck. At one point, he excused himself and stepped onto the terrace for fresh air. The cold coastal breeze brushed against his face, carrying the scent of salt and distant waves from Long Island Sound. He leaned against the stone railing, feeling the familiar weight of inadequacy pressing down on him. Maybe Walter had meant well, but this had been a mistake. He was invisible here. He didn't hear her approach at first. Victoria Harper stepped quietly onto the terrace beside him. Up close, she seemed less like a headline and more like a person. Fine lines around her eyes, a softness in her expression that cameras never captured. She stood there for a moment without speaking, gazing out at the dark horizon. Then she turned slightly and in a voice barely above a whisper said, "You're the only one who looks like you're here for the right reasons." Nathan blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. He felt his face flush. He wasn't here to network or to have his name printed in a donor booklet. He was here because someone believed he deserved a night out. He was here because he was tired, and maybe a small part of him wanted to remember what it felt like to be seen as more than a struggling single dad. Victoria continued softly, explaining that she had spent the evening watching the room. She could tell who came for recognition and who came out of genuine care. She had noticed how he listened during her speech, how he didn't compete during the auction, how he looked at the Children's Hospital slideshow with eyes that held personal understanding rather than polite sympathy. Nathan found himself opening up in a way he hadn't expected. He spoke about Chloe, about losing his wife, about the quiet battles of raising a child alone. He admitted how out of place he felt, how small he felt among people who could write checks larger than his yearly salary without blinking. He expected embarrassment, maybe even pity. Instead, Victoria listened like a mother listening to her own son. She told him that when she was young and newly widowed, she had once attended a gala much like this and felt exactly the same. She had inherited wealth but not confidence. She had felt alone in a room full of people. Over time, she realized that money could build buildings, but it was lived experience that built compassion. Inside the ballroom, applause erupted as another auction item closed. But on the terrace, something quieter and far more significant was happening. A bridge was forming between two very different worlds. Victoria asked about Chloe's dreams. Nathan smiled for the first time that night as he described his daughter's love for science, how she wanted to be an astronaut, how she built cardboard rockets in their living room. Victoria's eyes lit up. The Harper Foundation, she explained, had recently launched a scholarship initiative for children of single parents pursuing STEM education. She didn't offer charity, she offered opportunity. In the weeks that followed, Nathan's life began to shift in ways he could never have imagined. Chloe was invited to participate in a summer science program funded by the foundation. Nathan was offered a position on a community advisory board, not because of his wealth, but because of his perspective. Victoria insisted that decisions about helping families should include voices from those who had lived the struggle. Nathan's evenings slowly changed. Instead of feeling like an outsider looking in, he became someone whose story mattered. He still worked at the garage. He still packed lunches and read bedtime stories. But there was a new confidence in his step. He realized that worth was not measured by the price of a suit or the size of a donation. It was measured by resilience, by love, by showing up every single day for the people who depended on you. Months later, at the next Harper Foundation event, this time held in a modest community center in New Haven, Nathan stood on a small stage to share his journey. Chloe sat in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. Victoria watched from the side, not as a billionaire hostess, but as a woman who had recognized something genuine in a quiet man on a terrace. Nathan spoke about feeling out of place, about nearly leaving that first gala, about the whisper that changed everything. He spoke about how sometimes the most powerful thing someone can do is simply notice another human being. If this story is touching your heart right now, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment about someone who believed in you when you felt invisible, and share this message with others. Your engagement helps stories of hope reach those who need them most. And before we close, I have a special request for you. Comment the words "kindness changes lives" if you believe that one small act can transform someone's future. That night in Greenwich, Nathan had walked into a mansion feeling smaller than ever before. He walked out understanding something priceless, that he had never been out of place. He had simply been waiting to be seen. And sometimes, all it takes is one whisper in the dark to remind you that your story matters, that your struggles have shaped strength, and that even in rooms filled with glittering chandeliers, the brightest light will always be a compassionate heart.